Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Driving Digital Transformation today that we have with Angela Govila. So Angela is the head of digital for Chase for business at JP Morgan Chase. She currently leads an aggressive digital transformation agenda, which builds on success of the current mobile and online service offerings, investing in innovative ways to deepen customer engagements and profitability through the use of digital channels. So with that, again, Angela, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to invite you, and I look forward to your presentation here, and also questions from the class. So for anybody who's joining us online, there is a Q&A area in the Zoom bar that you can see right now. Please feel free to ask questions as we go through this. This is an open conversation, right? We're here to get your insights, your questions, and really, help put you on a path to realize some of the opportunities after IST and beyond into the future. So with that, Angela, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm really excited to be talking with you and talking to the students today. It's a privilege to be just talking to IST students because I am an alumni and I'm a very proud alumni of the school. I graduated in 2005 and I've just loved how the school's grown. It was a school then and it's now a college, and just seeing the talent that we have out the school's producing is phenomenal. So I absolutely love the fact that we're doing Startup Week, and Startup Week has grown to all campuses across Penn State, started out in IST, and just being a part of it is just so exciting for me. So I am grateful for the opportunity. Thank you very much for having me today. Cool. If we can flip to the next slide, perfect. So for folks who are joining us, just a little bit of background on who I am and what I've done. And this is primarily just to give you a little bit of insight on career opportunities after IST. So I graduated in 2005, joined General Electric, part of their information management leadership program, which over the years has now adopted to, I think, a digital management leadership program. Then moved into consulting and have since been with a couple of banks, Capital One, and now to Chase. And in between, I had my own startup as I was exploring entrepreneurship, and I started my own product management and Agile consulting startup based out in Seattle. So we moved a bunch with both my husband and my careers, and along the way we've made lots of friends, and along the way we've been sure to get involved with the IST community and continue our education through the various programs that get offered. So I have a bunch of certification courses that I've taken over the years to keep myself sharp. So I'm happy to be talking to you today about digital transformation. It's a buzzword that gets thrown around quite a bit. Agile and product management are also buzzwords that get thrown around quite a bit. So my goal today is really to demystify a few things and really have a candid dialogue as a practitioner of what we see in the industry and where everything is going. Next, please. So today's goals are very basic and very simple. I would really hope that you learned something new today. I hope this conversation creates a further interest and broadens your horizons around the topics of digital transformation and Agile and product management. We'll talk about what the challenges are. We'll think about what are potential career opportunities. And when you think about products in your everyday life, actually applying some of the principles we talk about today in trying to see how can you execute and think a little differently about introducing change. And at the end of the day, this entire conversation is futile if we are not interactive and we're not in a classroom setting. If this was, a couple of years ago, we'd be there in person and we'd be having a live conversation. I'd be able to read the room along with Matt. And today we struggle with that a little bit. And so your Q&A section is the way we engage today. So please do take advantage of it. And lastly, this is just completely my point of view, what I'm talking about. I'm not representing Chase. I'm not representing any of the companies and examples we talk about today. And your mileage will really vary on today's discussion on where you are in your journey of understanding what's happening in the industry. So let's move forward, Matt. So this is something that I think we planted the seed with a couple of students in the class, right? So I would love for folks to just tell me what they think digital transformation is. And I'm just going to open the Q&A section and see if I can see any of the comments. There's a lot of buzzwords that get thrown around for digital transformation. What's a couple of buzzwords that come to mind for you? And I'll give folks a minute.
Thank you for that, Angela. And I'm monitoring the Q&A also here. So I know Raid and other students that we've talked about this before. Please feel free to go ahead and just type your questions out, and or not questions in this case, but your ideas about digital transformation.
Would you like me to read this question to you, Angela?
Nope, I can see it now. Thank you, Peggy. So I've got right saying changing the way that business operate from old ways to entire digital environment. Absolutely correct. Analog to digital, Levi. Absolutely correct. If you flip to the next slide, Matt, let me talk about a few things that people might hear about. Gathering big data and using it. Absolutely correct. You guys are definitely in the right direction. All of those things, moving from analog to digital, going from an old operating model to a new, using data to do it, changing the infrastructure behind it, using the latest cloud technologies, which gets into the infrastructure and storage space, but then also putting the customer at the heart of it. And how do you actually design technology and products that speak to the customer? And so buzzwords like personas and metrics and research and empathy all get thrown around along with all the things you're talking about. And all of that constitutes digital transformation. So the phrase digital transformation is a really broad phrase. Yep, and Renee, you're talking about creating an online hub for access to all services. Absolutely correct. All the things you're talking about all feed into the general concept of digital transformation. So if I take an example like, what would be a good example? So let's just talk about just in the banking industry. Till a few years ago, we still deal with checks, but then how you deposited a check, you had to go to an ATM to deposit it, and now you can actually just take a picture with your phone. And that feature of being able to do a mobile remote deposit has been around for a little bit, but that's an example of a transformation where it was a physical paper process that's been translated into a digital feature, right? That's just one way of, just one example of a product that's changed. But when a company starts thinking about how do I operate with more speed to market, how do I become more nimble? So I'm listening to my customers and I'm adapting to what they're saying at the speed, and the speed is different in different industries. So for example, in banking, the speed is a little bit different because we have regulation we need to think about. We're not in a position where, we can't move fast and break things because we're dealing with people's money. But if you are, let's say, a social media provider, you can do that because a lot is not really at risk when you introduce a new feature. So when you think about all the keywords that I have on the screen, personas and metrics and customer research, and the word product, a lot of these things mean different things to different people. So if we just go to the next page, Matt, let me just talk a little bit about, let's click forward. And when we start talking about some of these things, the idea at the back of the mind is really when you look at a cup of coffee, is it really a cup of coffee or is it the experience, right? So we may have a lot of Starbucks lovers in the audience. I personally love Starbucks. I get my very specialized, customized drink there that my husband refuses to repeat my order. And he's like, nope, you go ahead and order, honey, because I have so many modifications. And you know why? Because I love the experience of ordering something that is customized to me. So it's not just getting a cup of coffee. It is, for me personally, getting a green tea frappuccino with all these different things, right? And so the entire experience, like I don't think of coffee as the product. It's the experience of getting the coffee. That's the real product that Starbucks is selling. Same thing with the reason I have the lipstick up there is because Sephora, if we have any Sephora shoppers with us on the webinar, Sephora has done a phenomenal job of digital transformation. When you're in the stores, they have these stations where you can pick up different makeup and you don't actually physically have to apply. There's an augmented reality machine where you can try out different things without actually putting them on. So there's a way that they've made the experience so different in the stores where I can try on multiple lipsticks without actually putting them on me, but because I upload a picture or they take a picture of me and then I can just move through the different shades and decide what looks good on me. And so they've taken a process where, I would go into a Sephora store and physically try on makeup on my hands, or, use the testers to try on the different lipsticks. They've now digitized that experience, and that is transformational. And some of the things that we always talk about when we think about digital transformation or innovation related products, definitely the iPhone, anything to do with Apple, everybody knows about, that's the prime example that gets all the things that Apple has done to disrupt the industry. Can you hit next, please, Matt? And so as you start thinking about what the work is and how it's being done, redefining that work is really where digital transformation is going. So just the example of the coffee and the lipstick, lipstick and the coffee as the product, you're thinking about the experience of what the customer is doing to make that purchase. So when you get into the concept of digital transformation. Can we move forward, Matt? So what are some of the reasons that an organization will want to go digital? And again, I'd love for you guys to use the webinar to respond to that. So why would an organization like a Starbucks or a Sephora or a Chase or AT&T or a Pepsi, any company, big or small, would want to drive digital transformation? What do you think the reasons are? Yep, absolutely. Cost is one of them. Understand client habits with data collection, enhance customer experience, keep customers. Very true. You're all absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And if we just click through, Matt, on the next couple of clicks and fill out the slide, the reason organizations want to drive digital transformation is for cost, is for driving customer experience up and keeping customers actually with them, so driving retention. At the end of the day, they want what the projects they're working on to be predictable, reliable, transparent, and to know that they're working on the right priorities so business goals can be met. At the end of the day, everything's about meeting the business goals. So, for example, if I run, let me think about this. If I have a business goal of doubling my sales, let's say Angela runs a boutique jewelry store, and Angela's goal is to double her business goals. How can she do that? She can probably do it by doing some, instead of doing marketing in a local sort of newspaper or print media, using social media like Instagram or Facebook to do some of the advertising, right? And this is a very basic example, but thinking about ways where we are being more predictable on ways of meeting the business goals. I think I'll have some better examples as we go along on driving digital transformation. Cost is a really big factor, driving operating costs down, driving human labor costs down, driving efficiency in the resources you have, getting the most value out of the resources, whether they're IT systems, or whether they are, my apologies, I don't know if you can hear the baby in the background, but that's Adrian saying hi to all of you. And if you can hear the baby, please just ignore. She's just having a gala afternoon like I am as well. Why don't we move to the next page, Matt? So keeping in theme with the comments you have around driving costs down and automation, what do you think is, I have a couple of buzzwords here, right? And the reason I'm calling the buzzwords because they're sometimes misunderstood. And I don't know how much time you all have spent in class studying about this. So if you can tell me what is Agile, what is product management, and how they're different, I think that will really help in grounding us for the next part of the discussion. And I'll give everyone a minute for it.
Yeah,
So let
these
me
are
give,
some really good topics, and I'm glad you brought them up here, Angela, because how many times do we conflate these in many different ways? And so this is a good thing for the class to really start thinking about. Is you'll hear different definitions of these things. Sometimes agile the methodology, sometimes agile the adjective, and that's why I'm kind of curious to see what Raid and others are saying here. So thank you.
cool. Agile is an approach used to address projects in many iterations to fit the uncertainty of unpredictable projects. We've got Shaunak chiming in too. Agile is when a company is moving towards a more flexible type of business process using cross-functional teams. All right. Let's hear it from the rest of the folks as well. And then I'll dive into some of the definitions and the differences between product management and Agile. And I have to say, these are things that I've learned over the last few years. This is definitely not something I've learned at school back in 2005. So it's okay if you don't know the answers. We're here to talk about it. We have an anonymous attendee saying Agile is an iterative framework for product development. Product management is the strategy. Why don't I start unpacking a little bit as more responses coming in? We'll include that in our discussion. So there's a stark difference between Agile and product management. Agile is a software development methodology, which, to folks' point, is iterative. So instead of doing, when you work in software development lifecycle, which is a waterfall approach, you have a big bang approach to deployment of features. So instead of, when you put something out in production, let's say you're making a website. Oh, let's take an example of real life. So you're looking to, you are you live in this country and you're looking to get vaccinated, and in your local county or state, you are trying to figure out, how do I go get vaccinated? And let's say you are part of an organization that is actually instituting the websites that contain information for how people should get vaccinated. So there could be one approach where you put together a website without talking to anybody. You have a sign up form without talking to anybody, and you do the best you can in actually creating something and putting it out in production. You do it, it's a big bang approach. You spend a month doing it or 2 months doing it, and now it's in production. And now people have started using your sign up form for signing up for the vaccine, and all these nuanced feedback is coming through. For example, someone that's the age of 16 and has a chronic condition should technically qualify to receive the vaccine, but your form didn't account for it because we didn't add that user feedback to include the nuances for the situation. So if you were to work in Agile, what you do is you'd break down what you're putting into production and release it in shorter increments. You'll get feedback from your users or clients and take that feedback and implement it. And so instead of doing a big bang approach of putting out your website and your sign up form, you'll do an iterative approach of creating the form, getting feedback, changing the form. So you don't actually put something out in production, which is big bang, and then making changes becomes harder. And I'm speaking from experience we live in Dallas at the moment, and we've had a hard time getting signed up for vaccines because I'm exactly seeing these types of issues. And that's why I'm so well versed in them, in how the forms that are getting put out have only half-baked information, and then they change the form and now you've lost your information. So as a user, it's very confusing. I've had duplicate entry of information, and at the back end, they've got multiple entries for me and they can't really figure out what to do with me as a client to go sign up for the vaccine. So that's an example of waterfall versus Agile. Now, Agile is the software development methodology. And now what is the concept of product management when I think about this, right? Product management is the entire end-to-end experience that I'm talking about, which in Agile, you only purely focus on the software piece. You're thinking about what's on the website. You're thinking about your backend server. You're thinking about where you're going to host it. You're thinking about what are the fields of the form, how do they get saved, and then what information gets printed and what information gets emailed. You're not thinking about the end-to-end experience. That is the job of a product manager who's responsible for really thinking about the end-to-end experience for that customer. So a product manager's responsibility would be how does the information, how does the customer find out about the information? What information do they find out about? What is their experience to go sign up? How do they sign up? What happens? How many reminders do they get? How many notifications do they get? Do they get to go to the nearest vaccination hub to them? Do we tell them what it is? Do we make it hard for them to find it, or do we don't even think about it? And what happens when they want to sign up another family member? What happens when they don't have an email address? What happens if there's one phone number for 5 people in the household? The product manager is responsible to think about that end-to-end customer experience and actually addressing and fixing that. So think about it, they're like the CEO of their own product. And the product in this case is your experience on getting COVID-19 vaccination. Does that help in terms of context? Do these examples resonate with you all? All right, so I'm going to keep moving forward. I want to make sure we're spending a good bit of time and then getting into any open questions you all have. So if we just flip to the next page, I have a diagram here, and I think you'll have to click once more, Matt. I have a diagram here that really explains the meat and potatoes of, for digital transformation to take place, you have to bridge the gap between the software development methodology, which is Agile, and the product management aspect of it, and think broadly and think about the end-to-end perspective. So product management really sits at the heart of business, tech, and design. So when you are on this chart on the top right, the business factor, right? You're thinking about market forces, you're thinking about the larger strategy, you're thinking about what data will you gather and how will you measure your success through metrics and KPIs. Who are the stakeholders that are involved to get this done? The second part of this diagram is the technology piece, and that is where Agile really sits. What's the development going to look like? What's the engineering? What's the architecture? And then when you think about the design piece, voice of the customer, what feedback is the customer giving us? There's different types of designs to content, interaction, media, and having a continuous product feedback loop. And all of that, brought that together at the intersection of business, tech, and design is where product management sits, and Agile is one component of it specifically. Now, on paper, this sounds very easy to sort of think about, but in reality, it's a very gnarly topic, and which is why people spend a lot of time, there's tons and tons of videos on YouTube, there's tons of books written out there just for design. For example, there's different ways of doing design. There's different ways of, there's innovation hubs that companies create. There's the concept of that Google introduced called design sprints, where within 5 days you can come up with a prototype, something that users can give you feedback in right away. But at the end of the day, when you are, as someone who wants to drive digital transformation, you need to understand broadly what Agile is. Agile is a component. It's the way software gets developed. And there's tons of Agile training available as well, right? It has 3 different roles. At the end of the day, there's a Scrum Master, there's the team, and there's a product owner. And then the larger concept of product management includes bringing all the aspects of aligning back to the business goals, using the right technology, and having the customer front and center and sitting in between. And that's where product management really sits. So if we flip to the next page, I think this might make it a little bit more real. Somebody talked about strategy in the Q&A. And when it comes down to strategy is a means to an end, right? Strategy is, how am I going to grow my business from 1x to 5x? So how am I going to grow market share? Or how am I going to, I'm starting a company and I want to go IPO, right? What is my strategy to get there? And once you create the strategy, actually, how do you convert it into action? That's where rubber meets the road. And to me personally, ideas are a dime a dozen. It's the execution of that idea, getting to success is what really is the differentiator. And so what I created here is, in my mind, a simple guide map or a framework or a roadmap, how you want to think about it, going from a company's mission all the way, breaking down what you want to do into specific results. And towards the end of this presentation, I have a real life example where, not real life, sorry. I have a hypothetical example that I've just made up, which will make the conversation more real. And that's around taking a feature and introducing a new feature. So if you think about going from mission to vision to business objectives, these sounds like buzzwords. So why don't we break it down a little bit, right? So if you think about what would be a good example, let's kind of do this on the fly. So Google, for example, wants to make the world's information available easily. I'm sure they have a catchier phrase to describe that, but that's basically their mission statement, is they exist to be able to organize world's information in a way that people can find it easily. What's their vision? So they have a mission statement. Their vision is so that everybody in the world has access to equal information. How do they go about doing that? What's their business objectives? An example, and I'm really giving you all some rudimentary examples as a way to think differently. An example could be, oh, sorry, I don't know if you can hear the dog, but that's Roscoe. Everybody say hi to Roscoe. You're gonna meet my whole family by the time we're done with this webinar. So, sorry, please excuse me. I'm gonna just go on mute for a second.
That's okay. No, we could definitely, I can appreciate that. I have an old English sheepdog that right now is quiet behind me and on the bed. So this is part of the fun of working from home, right? Remotely and everything in a topsy-turvy world. But yeah, so again, it's completely understood, and that's the way these things go.
So thank you, Raid, for bringing us back to this, achieving the funding from service for the service from ads. That's absolutely one of the ways they monetize. And their objective, their business objective could be, we want our search to be easily available, and we want to make X percentage of revenue from it. And so then the goal becomes, hey, we want to make revenue from this service. And how do we do that? And that becomes more advertising. Advertising is one of the vehicles for them to make the money. So if you end up working on the Google Ads team, let's say you understand business goals, you understand the objective, you understand the vision and the mission. Now, the top half of this page is really being driven by the leadership team in your organization. You don't control much of it. Between the vision, mission, business objectives, and goals, those get set at the top of the house. Like I work for a bank, at the top of the house, our goals are set of, we have X percentage of revenue growth, X percentage of operational efficiency, X percentage of wanting to make sure that we don't lose customers. So I don't control that. I can control the bottom half, and that is where the rubber meets the road. So when I get into Agile, so now I have a goal, and I want to increase. My goal is introducing the capability for search ads to now be available on TikTok. I'm making this up on the fly as we go. So TikTok is a popular social media app. It has it targets a good bit of folks who are influential. There's tons of social media influencers on there. So now you are a product manager for Google Ads, and you need to figure out how can you get your ads on TikTok. And so the bottom half is when it comes to play. So you write what is known as an epic. An epic is a word that's used in Agile, and it's a description of what exactly you want to build. And that what you want to build gets broken down into stories and tasks, and then you align those tasks into key results. So an example would be, on TikTok, I want Google Ads to show up. And let's say by absolutely no endorsement of any sorts, I'm just right here, I have a Diet Pepsi, and I want a Diet Pepsi ad to show up. So my epic will be show Diet Pepsi ad on any TikTok at a beach, let's say. And then you break that down further into how does the object, a can of any beverage of your choice, shows up. Who works on that story, as in which developer on your team picks it up and actually then works with the designers, works with content, legal, a marketing, brand. And if you're working with an external company, there's a good bit of negotiation, contracts, all that required. And then you break down to the minutest tasks, basically saying this line of code will be written by this person, and they're being measured on this success rate, and that is your key result. So there's a lot of content that I've just shared. What questions do you all have? And my intention really is to not go deep, but to give you a high level flavor of how organizations really think about converting strategy into action. So let me pause for a second while I take a sip of my beverage and see if there's any comments or thoughts. Great question, right? So Raid is asking, what's the difference between business objectives and goals? And let me break this down a little bit further. A business objective, and again, these are Angela's definitions. So I want to be super clear. This is like not set in stone. Wherever you go, your leaders might use different words. This is the way I've internalized it in my career. And this is how I break down the problem statements I'm working on. You know what, Matt, if you just, can we flip to the last slide? I think I added the example, the hypothetical example, and that just might be the best place to go to. I think it's the second to last page. Oh, I'm sorry, you'll have to click through everything. My apologies. There should be one more page after this. Are we there? Yes, there we go. Okay, yeah, sorry, if we go back. This is it. So, right, you asked about what's the difference between business goals and objectives. So what I have here, I'm going to take a step back and just walk you all through a hypothetical example of what a feature card would look like, which is basically what a product manager will hand over to somebody on their team for development, which explains how your bottom half of the previous page is getting sorted for. So the hypothetical example is Samantha works for Facebook. And Samantha is on a team named Wonder Woman, and the feature she wants to introduce is one-click privacy, which I've been like, I would love to have one-click privacy. Like and so the description is the ability for the user to just in one click adjust their privacy settings across the platform. The benefit is transparency. We're following the regulation. It's come from, let's say, Susie from compliance. The estimate is it's going to take 6 weeks. We're going to put as part of the sprint, and it becomes part of the business vision of creating a safer networked world, with the business goal being providing customers with the transparency of their privacy settings. So if you think about starting on that converting strategy to action page, the top left had the mission. So Facebook's mission statement is to create a more connected world, right? Their vision is create a safer networked world, and their goal or the objective would be, the business goal would be providing the customers with that transparency for their privacy settings. So you're breaking down, it's almost like peeling the layers of an onion to some extent. And the outermost layer is your mission. And then you break it down as the vision, then you break it down as the objective, and then you break it down as the goal. And then you're getting into finer and finer level of detail on what you're going to make, what is the exact change you're going to make that's going to then drive back up into your mission. So in this case of introducing a one-click privacy setting, the metric or the key result that Samantha is going for is increasing user retention by 10%. And she can easily show that increasing user retention by 10% is going to drive the goal and the business objectives that the company set up. So I'm hoping this was useful to you all as an example to walk through. And I'm gonna, pause for thoughts, and I'm happy to flip back to the other content we have as well, because I want to be mindful of time as well. So somebody's asked this question. Oh, thank you, James. This is a really good slide, like the way you framed it. I appreciate that feedback. Thank you. To clarify, Epic is an ad promotion or a way of marketing? No, sorry. So I should have done a better job of describing what an epic is. So Andrew, thank you for that feedback. An epic is a description of the work you want to do. So in the feature card slide, the hypothetical example we're looking at, where the word description is, you can replace that with epic to some extent. It's a collection, and I'm getting technical now, it's a collection of stories as an epic. So if you almost think about it in project management categories, like if you think about a work breakdown structure, when you put together multiple bodies of work that need to get done, those are tasks, and at the highest level, they become an epic. Hopefully that was helpful, Andrew. Perfect, thank you, Matt. All right, so I would love to flip back now, Matt. I'm sorry for the back and forth, but I just thought it would be helpful for the audience. I would love to flip back to the slide that says, what are the challenges of digital transformation? And so now we've talked a little bit about broadly what digital transformation is, components and how to get there, which is you have to introduce Agile, which is an iterative way of producing software. And we talked about product management, which is a thinking end to end from a customer's point of view and about the end to end experience and owning everything in between as the CEO of your own product. And that constitutes digital transformation. And none of this is easy. Absolutely, none of this is easy. There are several failure points along the way. And what I have here is truly based on personal experience in the many organizations I worked in, is where folks have no real plan of what we want to do. There's a common myth for some reason that if I'm agile, hey, I want to move fast and I want to break things, so it's okay for me to not have a plan. And that is not true by any means. You know, that is the misnomer in the industry. You can be agile, and actually agile ends up requiring more planning because you are producing usable soft iterative code every 2 weeks. So you need to really think about what is it that you want to put out in production, and it has to be grounded in feedback that you're getting from the customers. So not having clear vision of where you're going, no roadmaps, poor business planning, very common failure point. Another one is very limited trust between the people that are on the team. A job is a team sport. That is true in as a student, you work on team projects. And when you get into corporate America and you're working on anything and everything, you are part of a team. And so trust becomes the cornerstone of success on any team. And that lack of trust is a big one. Unclear roles and responsibilities. So not knowing who's doing what. Interaction models are not clear. And then lastly, the right tools are not being used, right? People living in spreadsheet hell. There's no sort of central tool for road mapping on what's getting put in production when. There's no groomed runway. There's a laundry list of things that good agile development has, and good hygiene is part of it. And that missing really makes digital transformation a challenging and fun space to be in. So if we move to the next page, dysfunctional teams and missed targets is another pitfall or challenge of digital transformation. And let me take if you just click through the images, Matt. Oh, sorry. If you just go back. Oh yeah, my bad. It's right there. For some reason I wasn't seeing it. So the reason I picked out these emojis is when it comes down to leading digital transformation at scale, my experience has only been in large organizations. And so you've got a lot of stakeholders involved and everybody has opinions. And how do you bring people together into clear, coherent thinking, and you're marching folks into the right direction? And what ends up happening is if you don't have the proper hygiene, if you don't have the proper business planning or clarity of goals and clarity of vision of where we're going, you end up having unhappy folks on the team, so which drives down employee morale. So you've got disengaged people on your team, so retention can be high. You've got targets that are missed. So going back to our chart of mission, vision, business objective, goals, and then the bottom half is what you end up controlling. You miss those targets, and eventually, when targets are missed, the CFOs of the business are looking at how the company is doing. They're going to start taking cuts. So not doing digital transformation the right way can be actually very expensive to the organization. And it can be very expensive to the folks that are involved in terms of not being able to translate their work into business results that move the needle for the business. So let's move to the potential solutions. And I haven't asked the audience a question in a little bit. I would love for the audience to tell me, what do you think are some of the potential solutions to the problems we've talked about? And the problems we've talked about, you've got dysfunctional teams, you have missed targets, you have, you're living in spreadsheet hell, you don't have the right tools, you have folks who don't know what their roles and responsibilities are, and you don't have a clear path to success. You don't have a roadmap. So what do you think are the solutions on how do we get around some of these challenges? Yep, both of you are right, and Nicholas, absolutely correct. Good communications with the teams, providing training for employees, spot on. And communications ends up being the biggest factor for any failure in the organization. What else could be another solution? Yep, developing standards or how things are done. It's like you're reading from the next slide, which you haven't seen. Awesome. This is awesome. We're on the same page, guys. Perfect. So we just click back to the next page. Yep, we've got an Anonymous person talking about talking to customers and doing more testing with customers and then pivoting. Most definitely. And that would be one specific component of the product management lifecycle is getting customer feedback. And it comes down to, if you, one of the charts that talked about product tech and design, there's a bullet point on there and continuous feedback from the customers on the design side. Absolutely correct. That would be a big part of it. So at the most basic level to what the group has said on the webinar, clear communications is a big part of it. Having a clear communication model on who does what is a big part of it. So roles and responsibilities easily defined, clearly defined. When do the teams come together to actually do business planning, to do sprint planning, to do product planning? Are you looking at a 4-month view? Are you looking at a 3-month view? Are you looking at a 6-month view? Are you making those adjustments monthly? So to someone's point on organizational standards, having operating rhythms and norms defined, and then actually having good hygiene for Agile and product management practices, which comes through making sure your people are trained up. So you all are definitely in the right direction. And these things are so rudimentary and basic, but organizations really do miss the mark because they're easier said than done, right? So clear, and also because the product management topic and digital transformation topic itself are evolving on how organizations need to drive this change. The understanding of how these problems can be solved is also changing. So in my experience, I don't know if I talk about this in the next one, yeah, but we'll cover it here. In my experience, clear definitions of roles, which is what is the role of a product owner, what is the role of a scrum master, what is the role of a stakeholder, like someone from the risk, legal, marketing, brand, content team, what are the levels of responsibility they have, what are the ways they can participate in your planning process. Those are simple things that have to get resolved. Another one that I didn't include on here, so my bad, is introducing a tool. So there's tons of tools out there for roadmap planning. One of my favorites is Roadmonk. I've used it for several years and they have evolved the product as well. Basically, visually, everybody's seeing what the roadmap is, where we're going, and where do we not plan to go. I think that's an extremely important part. And then introducing a very predictable cadence and a rhythm of what we're going to work on, who is going to work on it, and the impact it has on the organization will make things a lot clearer. So we'll end up solving, and if you do it frequent enough, so for example, we had the thing around dysfunctional teams. So clear communications, clear roles and responsibilities, bringing the team together on who does what and solving for the dependencies will address the dysfunctional teams. The missed targets, if you know that you're not going to put something in production, we go back to the one-click privacy example that I had with Samantha. If Samantha knows that she's not going to be able to put this out in the next release, she can inform all the right people to say, hey, we hit a roadblock and now we're going to go release it 2 months from now. So the marketing team that actually wanted to promote this can also adjust their plans. And because you live in an interconnected world, and that will come through good product management and hygiene. So a lot of content here, really. I wanted to leave you guys with a couple things. So we're coming towards the tail end of our time together. And so what I have on the next page is a couple of thoughts on my goal when I started out, 30, 40 minutes ago, sorry, just tracking time here, was to really make sure you walk away with something you've learned new, something that broadens your horizons and creates interest. And I'm hoping that the last 40 minutes have done that for all of you. And my goal was also to use examples that are more relatable. And some of them were off the cuff, so may not have hit the mark, but some I think it might have resonated with you. So I want to leave you with a few things on how to think about, as an IST student taking a 411 course, as you think about your careers, what are the potential roles in Agile transformation? And we've talked about becoming a specialist in Agile, becoming a product manager, but even just the concept of understanding product management will help you when you are looking for job opportunities. So I have a series on YouTube. I've done educational webinars and seminars on product management that anybody can go view. There's no catch at all. I don't have at the time when I did all of these things. I did have a business and consulting business of my own, and then I stopped doing that. So the content still exists. It's out there, and it's all Angela's point of view in materials that's getting shared. So take it for what it's worth. But it'll be informational nonetheless. And when it comes down to when you're in the process of looking for your next job and you figure out where you're going, understanding the business that you support and the function that you support is a really big part of it. So in IST, like the beautiful part of the major is it's an interdisciplinary program. You can take a highly technical track. You can take a track that bridges the gap between technology and business. You can take a track that goes towards social sciences. You can take a cybersecurity track. But at the end of the day, everything you do as an IST major in the workforce, you are supporting the business. And whether it's the business of TikTok, whether it's the business of Pepsi, whether it's the business of coffee or lipstick, whatever, you name it, right? At the end of the day, there are board of directors, there are shareholders, or there's a venture-backed, company. And so you have to meet those, you have to understand what the business is looking to do. And so that knowledge you shouldn't ignore that. That's my only 2 cents here. And it takes a while. Like it took me a while to really learn the business because that's not something that came naturally to me. I had more of a tech bend early in my early career, and it took me a while to understand the business. And it makes a really big difference when you do. Understanding how the roles are evolving. So the things we are talking about today, these are not things I learned in school. These careers didn't exist 15 years ago. They've come about in the last 5 to 8 years, or at least I didn't have that opportunity to learn about them. So in 5 to 10 years from now, there will be different jobs that exist. AI and machine learning, data science jobs will continue to grow, and so will product management and transformation jobs continue to grow. So keep an eye on how the roles are evolving. Driving culture change to keep the customer front and center. No matter what you do, understanding the business you support, you obviously as an IC student understand the technology, but the customer is at the heart of it, and we forget about the customer experience when we design some of these things. So keeping that front and center. And when you run into difficult situations, which you will when you're doing Agile transformation, because you're trying to change people and change the way things work, it takes a lot of time to build trust. It takes a lot of openness, and it takes a lot of constant communication. All the themes that all of you on the webinar touched on. And lastly, continuously seeking feedback and being open about when we can change things and when we can't change things is extremely important, because that not only makes you available to hear different point of views, but then you can use that information to actually drive the organization forward as well. So that's basically what I had for you all today. The next few pages, really, we already talked about the examples, but starting with the end in mind and applying this framework, I would honestly encourage you, maybe Matt, in one of your classes or as a take home, folks on the call, think about a product that they love. Let's say you are a major Instagram user or YouTube user. Think about something you want to improve in those products and think about how you'll execute change, using this framework. So it's just a different way to think about it, because it really puts you in the mindset of thinking about the business and thinking about the customer, and really encourages you to think about the end in mind. So that's a wrap for me. I would love to hear thoughts from you, Matt, or questions that the audience has. And I also have my contact information here. You can find me on LinkedIn. I actually don't know if angelagovila.youtube works, but you definitely go to YouTube and search for my name and you'll find my channel. I just don't recall the exact, I think it should work.
Angela,
Pretty
thank
sure.
you so
Yeah.
much. That was excellent. So it looks like we do have a question coming in from Aiden as well.
All right.
So yeah, if you want to take a moment there.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you improve retention within your product as well as keep it? Furthermore, when and how do you pivot or decide the product has failed? Great questions, Eden. And I think the more I think about it, it really goes down to the metrics that you've decided. So if in our framework that we talked about, there's a point in which you're deciding what the metrics are for the things you want to work on, right? And so your decision on whether a product has failed and now you need to pivot goes back to the metrics that you defined early on as your success criteria. So if we take Samantha as an example, she wants to increase the KPI. I'm sorry, Matt, can you flip back to the page that has the hypothetical example? I think that's just one slide prior. Yeah, perfect. So in this example, Samantha's working on, just a reminder, and Samantha's working on a feature to introduce one-click privacy on Facebook. Completely hypothetical. I created it completely out of thin air when I was working on this. And she set up a metric or key performance indicator that I want to introduce user retention by 10%. So let's say she puts the feature out in market, she tests it out for 6 months, and she's not getting user retention of 10%. She's getting user retention of 5%. Now, what can she do? So she's still getting 5% people that are not leaving because of privacy reasons. She needs to understand, why is it only 5%, not 10%? And so she should have some way of reading customer feedback. And I would say people are very vocal about Facebook feedback, for example. So it shouldn't be very hard for folks to, like reviews on the App Store or Google Play Store, a great place to get customer feedback. If you are working on a product that is through the App Store. Or there's different channels that I'm sure Facebook has for feedback. So understanding that feedback, what are the people saying? Maybe it's hard to do. Maybe it's not as simple in terms of user experience. And can you do anything with that feedback? If she believes truly that she can take the feedback and make the product better, then you may decide to keep it as is. And if she believes that the feedback is completely off kilter from what was expected, then you would consider the product has failed. But at the end of the day, what is failure really? Failure is just an opportunity to learn and do something different, right? So that would be a great point to pivot. So there's no clear-cut answer, but it's using your metrics that you've defined as a way of making your decision. So Aiden, hopefully that's helpful in how you're thinking about it. Yes. Hi, Madhvi. Nice to see you as well. It has definitely been a while. Gosh, Madhvi, when I remember when you joined Penn State when I was about to just graduate. And so, yeah, it's definitely been a long while. It's nice to see you as well. All right. Thank you, everybody. This was phenomenal. I really appreciate the opportunity. Please find me on LinkedIn. If you do end up watching any of my YouTube videos and enjoy it, let me know. I'm not actively working on updating anything, but it's always helpful to get feedback. If there were any concepts here and there was a lot of stuff, I think I was really trying to keep it high level. Happy to have dialogue with anyone afterwards on any of these topics. Happy to come back, Matt, and talk to the class about anything at all in further detail as well.
Thank you for that so much, Angela. I thought this was excellent. I've already taken some things that I know we're going to be unpacking here in the next couple of days as we really start to think about these, the agile methodologies, the product owner, all these. Can I ask, though, a closing question, if I may? How many times have you been brought into an executive room and told about where things are going and had to offer some feedback or some ideas to maybe help massage or get things to where they need to be to kind of level set the room, or another question would be, how often do you just take what's handed to you and, it makes perfect sense and you can run with it?
I think the answer is usually never.
Yes.
Usually never, because when you get handed over something, so a lot of times, no knock on any of the senior leaders, they're just not super
Mhm.
close to what it takes to execute. And so I think it's very important that anybody that aspires to be a senior leader in any organization really understand the grassroots of how the work gets done. Because at the end of the day, companies hire you for you to be able to use your really sharp mind and bring new and fresh perspectives. So what I started out at the beginning of this when I talked about myself was the various sort of educational things we've done along the way. We, as in my husband and I, on just keeping ourselves fresh in the industry. And certificate courses are a great way of doing that, sharpen the saw and keep yourself engaged. And so though that sort of information, like I'll give you an example. Right now I'm taking a certificate course in from MIT on economics. I don't have an economics background. I have a tech background. I do digital stuff for a bank. But by learning about economics, I can now understand some of the senior level executive discussions that take place, and I can participate in it. So now my point of view becomes stronger because now I understand more of the business. I obviously understand how to execute a technology project. I understand how to do large initiatives, but now I'm getting closer to understanding the business. I can speak their language, right? So
Yeah.
when you get handed something down from senior leaders, to be able to speak their language and to be able to understand it from their point of view, which is mostly street facing and market facing, um, is a real value add for yourself personally and also for the organization. So
Mhm.
bringing your own thought leadership to the equation is a really big part of success in a large organization or small organization.
No, that's a wonderful way of saying it, and I appreciate that. And one of the things that I know we talk about is really think about what your boss's boss wants out of this. And if you start to put yourself in their shoes and understand made in economics and the market facing, then you can start to align yourself to the business and really support as best you can. So, Angela, I couldn't have said it better, and I can't thank you enough for joining the class today and having this discussion with us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I always enjoy talking about this. This is my bread and butter. I absolutely love what I do. Super fortunate to practice my passions and share it forward with the IST community. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. We'll see you later. So long. Thanks. We'll shut it
Yeah,
down now,
take care.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.